up about 4 feet in the air, so you have any splashback. And actually took 2 rain samples, one in July and the other one back in December. And what happened is I didn't really want to know. I'd read all the stuff about the chemtrails, and I knew they would spray us because I'd seen them spray us with malathion. Back in the 90s, we had a problem with what's called the Mediterranean fruit fly here in Central Florida, and they decided in their incredible stupidity they would spray us with a neurotoxin called malathion. I mean, they sprayed the houses, the cars, the homes,
everything.
Everybody got sprayed with malathion. So I knew that these idiots would do something like this. And so I tested the water, and then I took the sample, and I put it in the refrigerator, and I sealed it. And I thought, do I really want to know this? Well, 6 months later, they were spraying us really heavy again. It was over Christmas, and I took the water samples again. And finally, I sent them to a laboratory out of California, and I put them down as rainwater samples, and both of them came back so high in barium and aluminum, they were considered toxic by the EPA. I have those rainwater samples tests posted on my website. And so at that point in time, I began to realize, George, that somehow these compounds, these elements are being put into the atmosphere. But they tie together, though, remember, with HAARP, they tie together with the military-industrial complex. We can start talking about that in detail if you'd like. They also tie together with scalar wave application, and they also tie together with the artificial intelligence to try to connect us all together with by ionizing the atmosphere with so much electromagnetic radiation and plasma. So there's a lot of really interesting things we can talk about tonight concerning all of those topics, and each of those is a lecture on its own that I've written and actually have in my notes here that I can go through.
They're the 20 shows all by themselves, Ted.
Well, it's so funny. Your producer asked me to send you 30 questions, and I started laughing because, I mean, I literally have 100 articles in multiple journals laying out in front of me for an hour-and-a-half show, and I thought, this is going to be fun trying to get all this done in one night. So, but it all ties back together with Morgellons. It ties together with the artificial computer. It ties back together with Satanism. I know that's hard for people to believe.
That's a weird
black magic.
All right. Now, the barium and aluminum that's been discovered, is there any way that would be in the atmosphere naturally?
If you had some hydroelectric power plants, not hydroelectric, but coal-fired power plants, like in China, if the coal was contaminated with these types of metals, it could be in the thing, but usually that's sulfur dioxide that's being caused, and that causes the acid rain. I've never heard of coal being contaminated in these types of concentrations with it, so I don't believe in any way that can be in the atmosphere naturally, George. And plus, on top of that, this Alzheimer's has gone through the roof in the United States now. We've got so many people suffering with senile dementia, and so many problems with so many people suffering with so many different types of diseases. I mean, look at this mess with adult onset diabetes. I mean, look at that high blood pressure, look at the depression, look at the cancer rate. I mean, all of these things are through the roof. I mean, right now we've got people that are in their 40s and 50s coming down with Alzheimer's disease. And when you inhale this aluminum powder, these microcrystals, we can talk about that in depth if you'd like, but this aluminum compound into your body, into your brain, it goes directly into the bloodstream. Somebody goes right through the olfaction directly into the brain. And so it's a really quick way to give yourself Alzheimer's disease. So there are some things you can do, and also we're being sprayed with biologicals, which I believe are creating the Morgellons compound that we have in our body, this cross-domain species of fungus, plant, and insect is what it is. It's a cross-domain species when you finally analyze it. And we can go into detail on how that's formed. So there's so much stuff. Wherever you want to go with this, we can go tonight.
The spraying is being done for what purposes? What are they trying to do?
Well, what happens is this. The spraying is being done for a variety of different types of things. What they're primarily doing, they initially started off with the spraying, and they were doing it primarily from a military standpoint. And what they wanted to do, they wanted to have the people in the United States not be aware of what was going on. What happens is you're sending up energy into the atmosphere, and they were trying from a let's see. Let me just kind of start. Let's take a look at the issue from several angles. When you have heavy chemtrail spraying, it occurs most of the time, in the later afternoons and early morning, and you can see in the clear skies, it's photoionizing. It starts to kind of glow, and it sets up a huge plasma charge in the atmosphere. And what this does, it allows the scalar radar and the scalar weather radar, and also the military radar applications, to penetrate much more deeply with the ground-penetrating radar.
Hold on. In the sky in the morning, these tic-tac-toe patterns all over the place. It's got to be more than just jet fumes and trails, huh?
No, it is. In fact, let me give you the history of this thing, how they started it. They originally started this back in the 40s and the 50s, and they were spraying silver iodide, and that was relatively harmless to the environment compared to what they're doing now. But then they started doing more and more cloud seeding and weather control, and then the military decided they were going to start teaching their Air Force academies how to do this. In fact, they actually have chemtrail classes in the military. You actually pull up the journals if you'd like online. And what happens is they're spraying these things through the jet nozzles. They go into the engines, and they're creating nanocrystals, and they're being put into the air for the weather radar and for the scalar radar. It creates a particulate plasma that can be activated through microwave energy, such as through piezoelectric crystals or through electric optical properties that can be done through like HARP. You can use HARP, which is microwave energy, in what's called a phased array telescope, or not a telescope, a antenna, George, and you can actually cause this stuff to glow and become incredibly hot, and you can actually heat up a section of it up to 10,000 degrees in just a few seconds. The military want to be able to do that because they have an incoming ICBM missile. They can actually heat this 10,000 degree pocket of air up in front of the missile, and they can actually cause it to explode as soon as it hits this 10,000 degrees. It'll just literally melt the missile, destroying the military vehicle. Strontium and barium and strontium can take these chemtrails into the field of scalar physics. This allows you to up-concentrate energy at any spot you want to. For instance, you can have nuclear bomb-type explosions using chemtrails by creating scalar waves. By discharging, I'll explain to you what those are in a second. By discharging scalar fields, you have massive, massive explosions. And that could be what happened in 1908 when Tunguska had that massive explosion. A lot of people believe that Tesla had actually activated the Warkentif Tower back then, George, and actually just tried to broadcast energy into the North Pole, overshot the North Pole, hit Russia, and wiped out tens of thousands of acres. So 2,000 square miles of forest was completely destroyed, and he discharged the scalar wave, which is what some people think happened from the Warkentif Tower. The energy can be actually manipulated in the piezoelectric fields. This is what they're spraying with these piezoelectric crystals with the barium and the strontium and the aluminum. You can actually freely move to the field that can be triggered by external inputs. You can actually move energy to any place you need to put it. You can make it vibrate, turn it up to heat, create electromagnetic energy or sound. This is back where the intelligence community comes in now, because they can use sound to make external voice. People, they can hear voices. You've heard that they've got this term called the voice of God. They can hit you with certain generated energy frequencies by using this technology and make you nauseous, make you want to vomit, make you suicidally depressed within minutes. The military, again, they use the rockets to weather control Earth properties. They can also trigger earthquakes, George. That's one of the things that people don't understand. There are a lot of earthquakes that are being triggered. They're being triggered at the 10-kilometer depth, and the way you do that is just simply plate tectonics. The earthquakes should be evenly distributed throughout the country, but they're not. And this is what's crazy. What you'd have to do is send an 11 kilohertz signal, 11 hertz signal through, and it can modulate and trigger earthquakes through the use of scalar fields. This was done with James Maxwell's equations, which have been called the second great, unification of physics after Isaac Newton. He's right up there with Einstein. And this is how they move all this energy around the planet. And how they make these scalar waves is if you have two radio waves, like if you have FM radio wave, and you lay one radio wave on top of another radio wave, they have like a little hump in them. They're like a wave you see just like you take a water hose, you shake it, you have a wave go the other way. If you have two waves opposite of each other, and you do them both at the same time with the phased array antenna, what happens is you create a longitudinal wave. They annihilate each other, leaving a longitudinal wave. This is why they have to use phased array systems. And then what happens is if you lay two longitudinal waves over on top of each other, George, you create a scalar wave. And the scalar wave is what picks up the energy from the planet. It can be discharged at any point on the planet. But what's interesting about the scalar waves is they go through time-space according to James Maxwell's equations, and they go into the fourth dimension. That's what's so interesting about them. And all the information about this type of physics has been pulled out of the public domain, and it's only used for military applications now, so they're not giving us the research on that any longer. And what's interesting about that is scalar waves have no time or distance variable. In other words, if you transmit a scalar wave right now from this planet to 1,000 light years away, it's there instantaneously in the transmission of information. And that's why it's like thought. Thought waves are scalar waves. Prayers are scalar waves. And you actually change the very fabric of space-time by using scalar waves for prayer, words of thought, and words of... How old is the technology? The technology was originally postulated by naturalists back in the 1800s. Then, of course, Einstein talked about it. Newton never really got into that. test on. That's what we really brought to the forefront. The later 1800s, early 1900s, especially with the war the power. This technology has been around for a long, long time. It's the same technology that we're looking at space-based weapons like the Star Wars program they talked about. The same weapon systems that countries are being used to take planets and level the war. So there's a lot of things that get involved in clean microwave energy, low impact cell, big scalar waves. That's why people are thinking about nuclear war. We don't need to use nuclear wars anymore. We can lay entire cities and regions for waste out of space now to scale weapons. I think space is so far away, so much more than we ever thought it would be. And even recent bombs that don't even stop. Potential becomes self-organizing. Scalar potential eddies throughout the planet give shape and form to the holographic universe we're in. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to control the attention field of the holographic universe we're in by changing the very fabric of time-space by using the energy contained in the planet. It's really interesting when you start studying this, because I've studied it a lot. You can actually use it to cut tunnels into solid concrete, solid rock. You can actually melt rock with it and put tunnels right through. And what's interesting is that people understand when you pray, that meditation produces thoughts, and thoughts are scalar waves, and they're real, they're incredibly powerful energy waves. And of course, I've discussed this many times as far as scalar waves and information technologies, and how you can actually talk across the universe. That's the same way we talked about at the beginning of the show, about how the blood of Christ works. And if you want, we can do that too, but we can continue on the technology here on the scalar waves, because there's a lot more information to cover on scalar waves, on Morgellons, and also on HAARP, and also this chemtrail stuff.
So many people are hearing hums across North America, these low-grade hums, and they don't know what's going on. The sound is driving them crazy. Could that be coming from these waves?
It could be coming from the waves. It could also be coming from the tunnel boring equipment they have. They're building vast underground cities in the United States right now. That's some of the trillions of dollars, and I'm sure they've gone missing according to the Federal Reserve. They don't want to tell us where it went. Well, of course, a lot of that money is also being sent out into, into the different banking systems to buy up the New York Stock Exchange right now. We have about a dozen families that own, majority shares in the top 500 Fortune 500 corporations right now because of all this nonsense. But before Tesla started using the electromagnetic waves, he also worked with acoustics and sound, George, which could be where the hums are coming from. If you receive the right frequency, you could take a building down. It basically breaks the laws of thermodynamics, because that's from Newton, because it goes into the physics of the fourth dimension and free energy. This is the science that's postulated for time travel. This is what we're looking at: the stars, the Hubble Space Telescope. The Russian scientist Nikolai Kozyrov, he supposedly showed true time reversal by using advanced telescopes with non-optical signals showing the Andromeda galaxy, both the past, the present, and the future, by using this type of technology. And remember, in biology and scalar waves, DNA transmits, single photons in the form of longitudinal waves that speaks to other DNA. But when these cross, they create scalar waves, and this is how our DNA talks to itself. And that's why when you do the blood on the other side of the planet, it does what it does so quickly. This adds tremendous energy potential to the scalar waves, and that's why human beings are such powerful energy transmitters. The energy of a human is nothing more, again, than measuring the scalar potential of his or her biophotons. So it's really game-changing technology. It's game-changing research. The problem is it creates these huge field densities. This is why they use it in the military. And so what happens is you have this tremendous energy being created. This is what happened with Stonehenge and the pyramids, George. They were using the scalar potential of the planet and the eddies underneath the planet as far as the energy fields and the magnetic lines. And then when the continental plate shift occurred, what happens is all of these things were turned off. And they were doing this to control the attention field of the planet. And this is what the Druids have been taught to do many, many, many years ago by the fallen angels. In fact, the Druids were taught by the fallen angels to control the hologram by controlling the attention field, thereby controlling the hyperdimensional physics of these eddies and this power that runs through the planet and these currents that flow through the lines.
These scalar waves, is there anything that could go wrong with it, where something is so disruptive it could destroy part of the planet?
Well, yes. Tesla said that. And Tesla said he could take and split the planet in half by using the same energy frequency with the scalar waves, with these energy frequency modulators. He tied it to a skyscraper when he was living in New York, and actually tied it to two of the beams of the skyscraper and started putting the opposite frequency of the beams through the skyscraper, and the entire building started to shake and the windows were being blown out of it. And he said that if he had continued, the entire building would have been turned to dust. Sounds familiar, right?
Sure does.
Powder. And so he said he has the ability to do that. And if he continued to do it with the resonant frequency coming from the planet using the scalar technology, he could split the entire planet in half. So a lot of people believe this is the type of technology that was used to destroy the one planet that is now part of the asteroid field in our galaxy, in our solar system.
Are we the only person with this kind of technology?
Oh, no. We didn't come up with this technology. The fallen angels are the ones who did all this. They're the ones who taught us to control the attention field with the scalar technology. The fallen angels, and I always tell my Christian friends this, I said, look, you got to wrap your head around this. As far as these angels and these beings, these demons, or whatever you want to call them. A lot of people call them reptilian aliens, as David Icke likes to call them. But the truth of the matter is, this is very real stuff. These are interdimensional entities that basically live amongst us, and there are these different dimensions around us, and they actually feed off of our light photons. And, we're their food source, and they use us for fuel, basically. And it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And so I always tell my Christian friends, I am a Christian, that look, you got to understand that the Bible talks about this all the time. It talks about the angels, it talks about the demons, it talks about these things just showing up out of nowhere. And you got to wrap your head around this. You can't pretend like this isn't going on. This is a major, major part of the entire shadow government that runs everything. That started with the CIA. It's an inception in 1947. It also started back in 1934 with the control of the planet with the Exchange Stability Fund with the shadow government. And it's just been going on for a long, long time now. Now these international banking cartels, and of course the Germans also with the Vril maidens, they were talking to these interdimensional aliens way back in the 30s and in the 40s. They were getting a lot of the advanced technology from them. So no, we are not alone in this universe. And no, we're not the only ones with this technology.
But what about the Russians, the Chinese?
Oh, of course they do. Yeah, they did that with their woodpecker test. They did, back in the 60s, they could, do all that. The Chinese may or may not have it, but the Russians definitely have it, because remember, we worked with them and transferred a lot of information back and forth with them, before the Cold War started, and also during the Cold War.